words. And Jim, I'll let you take over.
Well, Chuck, thank you very much. And first of all, let me say how thankful I am for all of you here tonight. I look around this room and I see people that have worked so hard for me in various campaigns. But I've got to single out a couple of people. One is my longtime best friend and Chief of Staff, Bob Griffiths. I wrote a column about Bob called Bob Griffiths, an American Hero. Bob was in the fighting on Hamburger Hill, the worst fighting went on in Vietnam. I think 60% of his company was wiped out. And he is a patriotic American, and I have never known a more loyal Republican than Bob Griffiths. And Bob means so much to me. A lot of things that I got credit for, I owe him, and I can't say thank you enough to Bob Griffiths. Steve Hunter, I tell you what, Steve was actually represented Steve on a couple of things when I was in the law practice. That goes back, that shows you how long we've known each other. And I love him. I knew I've known his whole family over the years. It's a wonderful family. And Steve called me up and asked me back a little over 4 years ago now to start writing a column for the Focus newspaper. And I thought, well, I would give it a try for a few months. He wanted me to write my newsletter that I used to send out. And I said, well, I'll write mostly on national, international issues, but I said occasionally I want to write on sports or music or things like that. And actually, I've got my biggest reaction to, like my column where I wrote that Elvis and I sound great together. Pie or cake, where do you stand? When Coca-Cola was controversial and paying $77 million to somebody to not coach is crazy. Anyway, columns like that. But I want to thank Steve. My dad told me a long time ago, our dad, told me a long time ago that you know how long it takes them to forget you once you leave office, about as long as it takes the ripples to disappear when you throw a rock in the water. And I can tell you, thanks to Steve, at least some people have remembered me because I have been amazed. That paper, I call it Knoxville's conservative alternative. Every place I go, people that I have never met come up to me and tell me that they love my column and the Focus, and it just means a lot to me. And for Steve, for me and Dr. Ferguson and Dr. Black and all to do what we do, I'm grateful to him for personally, but also I'm grateful for him politically too, because he's really helps our party all the time. And then I got to say how proud I am of my sister, Becky and Nancy. Now, some of you know, and some of you know because it's in my book, that I told Becky after she'd been in 3 or 4 years, I said, Becky, I'm very proud of you. I said, I think you're doing a great job. I think you're a little bit more liberal than I am. And she looked at me and she said, Jimmy, everybody's more liberal than you are. some truth to it. But I said, in one of my columns about her, I have known every elected official in Knox County for most of my life. And I can tell you all of them have been really good people. Ed Schaus, for example, so many, Carson, so many, too many to mention, but I have never seen any elected official who has worked harder, Mike, than my sister. She goes to everything. It's just, I just am amazed, really, and I'm proud of Becky. And I got to tell you, I got to mention my wife, Vicki. Some of you know the story. Vicki and I were in the same school, in Bible school as toddlers. And Park City Presbyterian Church was one block off of Magnolia. It went out of existence many years ago, and we moved in 1959 to East Minister Presbyterian, and I'm still there. And all of you, or many of you know that I lived in Holston in East Knoxville. We started off we lived till I was 4 and a half in the Veterans Village, which is where the Austin East football field is now. That was low-income housing for veterans. And then we moved to Holston Hills to, I think, 1,400 square foot house. I grew up there, and we lived there in Holston Hills till I was 43. Then my late wife, who was so good to me, she found a home in Farragut that she fell in love with, and I said, and I did not want to move to Farragut. There's a lot of good people there, but I just didn't want to move there. And I told her, I said, all right, I'll move there, but I said, I'm still going to be a member of East Ministry. I'm still going to get my haircut at Barnes Barbershop, where I've gotten every haircut since my first haircut. And I'm still going to be a member of Holston Hills Country Club. And so I did live in Farragut for a number of years, and then I married Vicki, and Vicki is such an East Knoxville girl. She grew up in Holston Hills. She was a year behind me in Chilhowee, Holston. And she has all of her kids and grandkids are all Carter kids. So anyway, they're out here. So I've had such a wonderful. I've been lucky twice, real lucky in marriage, and Vicki has been wonderful to me. But I will tell you this, and I'm proud to be a Republican. You know, I hear these people say, proud to be a Tennessee Vol. Well, I'm proud to be a Tennessee Republican. And I can tell you right now, my column for next week starts off that Kamala Harris and her supporters are trying to pull off the biggest scam that's ever been attempted in the political history of this country. Because she's trying to be something that she never has been. She is a far left radical. At best, she's a socialist. And at worst, maybe even a Marxist. And I can tell you this, I've read 2 different articles. One said 150 countries, one said 175 countries, that people have fled from 150 or 175 countries to get into the United States just in the last year or so. And you know what? They're fleeing socialist running governments. It sounds good. I've heard Mayor Jacobs call it the siren song of socialism. It doesn't work. They ruin the economies. And God has blessed every country in this world with natural beauty and our natural resources, usually both, that can make those countries wealthy if they have the right kind of leadership. And if they would follow a free market capitalist society. And people now, they're not only fleeing those countries, they're fleeing all these Democrat-run cities and states. I don't know why, these liberal Democrats should be totally embarrassed. They're fleeing California. But Kamala or Kamala, however you want to say it, what she would do if given the chance is to turn this country into California. And we don't want that. And I say in my comments in there today, I end up by saying that not only will be terrible for us, but it would be horrible for our children and grandchildren. And I really believe that. If we've got to tell people, if you vote for Harris, you're voting for higher gas prices because they're totally controlled by private radicals. You're voting to force people into electric vehicles, which nobody wants, in which I saw a thing on TV the other night that they're too heavy for the guardrails, 2,000 pounds heavier, that they're bad for the roads. You're voting for higher immigration. And I'll tell you, all of us sympathize with people who are having to get by on $5 or $10 a day. At best, some people a lot less than that. We don't blame anybody, and we have the kindest people in the history of this world. No country has ever come close to doing more for people in other countries than we have. But I can tell you, you've got half the people in the world have to get by on $4 or less a day. Almost 75% have to get by on less than $10 a day. But you got 8.5 billion people. I can tell you, if we opened our borders, we would be flooded in with 3 or 4 billion people. Our whole infrastructure, our schools, our hospitals, our jails, our sewers, our highways, our whole economy. We couldn't handle that many people. And you'd see things, and the media now is trying to make these Haitian immigrants are going to tell them tearjerker stories about all of them, how sweet and kind they are. But I can tell you, I saw several people, you see these things on Fox, that were doing some bad things. And now they're trying to rehabilitate all these immigrants and stuff, but we can't assimilate all the people that want to come here if we don't enforce our borders. It's always said that if you don't have borders, you don't have a country. And I believe that, and that's what Donald Trump is trying to do. Now, the Biden-Harris administration is still flying in on a TPS, temporary protected status, 30,000 immigrants a month. They say they've flown in 1.5 million so far into that program, 30,000 a month. Flying them in for free. Kamala Harris wants to she wants to do everything free for these people. Free housing, free education, free medical treatment. She even of all things wants to give free transgender surgeries to people in the military or people who are here illegally. It's just unbelievable. And we haven't got that message out to everybody. And I know that a lot of women are wanting to vote for her because they talk about Harris and her people are against freedom on everything except abortion. And most pro-abortion people have always said they want to make abortions safe, clean, and legal. But they don't say anything about how many more millions of abortions you're going to have if she and her people come in there. So, I don't know, but we've got to get that message out there better than we have. She's for higher crime because she raised money to pay the bail of the people from Minneapolis, the people who burned and looted. She's always been for no bail laws. I mean, it's amazing. And now she's running ads pretending like she's a tough on crime prosecutor. That's the biggest bunch of hooey that's out there. And she's taking credit for all these convictions that the prosecutors working under her deserve the credit for. So I'm going to still support President Trump as much as I can, and I know you are too. But there's one other thing I was trying to think of, but I guess that's enough. Let me just end up with this. Yesterday, a friend of mine sent me a thing. A man from Indiana who died in 1890 had a special tombstone erected, 4 or 5 feet tall. Steve must have, I think I sent it to you. It says, a man named N. Grigsby, who died in 1890, and he had been put on his tombstone. Through this inscription, I wish to enter my dying protest against what is called the Democratic Party. I have watched it closely since the days of Jackson and know that all the misfortunes of our nation has come to it through this so-called party. Therefore, beware of this party of treason. They told me that I could bring a few of my books. And I will tell you, I would love to be able to give one to everybody in here. I can't do that because UT charged them $20. They didn't give a discount, but they charged them $20, which includes the sales tax. And it's about half serious and about half humorous. And I've got, I think it's worth the price almost just to read the letter that this young boy sent me. He said if he got 2 million signatures, would I do away with homework? You know, part of it, just a small part of it, said many kids these days are very troubled by homework, and it can put people in a state in which they can't recover from it. Homework is ruining our lives. I recommend you limit it, ban it, abuse it, or just get rid of it. I've got put up God I've got 205 vignettes or short stories about things, true stories. It's all written by me. It's no ghostwriting. I had so many people who told me through the years, I had so many strange, funny, unusual cases when I was a lawyer, and then when I was a judge, and now in Congress. And so I tell a lot of those stories. I've got sports stories in there about one of the nicest articles that they had several years ago. They had a nice article about me and my dad. And I described my dad. Of course, he'd been passed away for many years, but I said he was the kindest, sweetest, toughest, hardest working man I ever knew. And I meant tough in a good way. I didn't mean in a mean way. But I got the nicest handwritten note from Peyton Manning about that. And he said he'd flown out of Knoxville and they had articles in there, and he could tell from that article that I had the same kind of relationship with my dad that he had with his dad. So I've got some of the stories like that. I've got stories entitled Sex on an Airplane. Just a story about the first time the word urinate was ever put in an obituary. And believe it or not, it all ties back to my work in the Congress. And so I've got a lot of stories about that. I've got a story about my very first case out of law school was a first-degree murder case. Now that, David could tell you, that's unheard of. For a young lawyer, fresh out of law school. A black woman and her brother came to see me. She killed her husband. Well, I sat there and I talked to them for as long as I could, took whoever note that I could, because the one thing they don't teach you in law school is what to charge people. And they finally got to the end and wanted to know what I was going to charge them. And I said, well, you got to realize this is back when young lawyers were starting out at, if they were lucky, $700 or $800 a month. So I threw out something I thought sounded pretty big. I said, I'm going to charge them. This is why I was Steve Hunt's lawyer, because I charge these kind of Anyway, they said, well, it's going to charge me. I said, well, I'm going to charge $500 for the preliminary hearing and another $250 that goes on for full-scale trial in the big criminal court. Well, I'd gone into practice with Zane Daniel. We didn't even have all of our furniture moved. I kept hoping Zane would get back, but he didn't before they left, and I threw out those figures. Then Zane comes back, and I said to Zane, what would you charge on a first-degree murder case? He started throwing out all this work that you had to do, automatic appeal to the Supreme Court if you lost, blah, 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 blah. He said, I'd probably charge $15,000. Well, I knew then I had messed up that. So I said, well, what did you do to people? Which I didn't know these people from Adam, but I knew the man who had sent them to me. He said, well, I knew the deal. He said, I might go down to 10,000, but you got to do blah, 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 blah. And finally I said, well, what if it was your first case? And he said, wow, what have you done? In that case, I was very lazy. What?
That boy was his first time.
How you doing?
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I first started writing a column as I was the total conservative at UT Daily News. I said my first hourly pay job, that was for $1 a year as a groundskeeper at Volunteer Park when I was 15, but when I got to be 16, I got old enough to be hired at the AP on National Highway as $1 came an hour. Well, but I got to go to the Republican Convention to be an honorary assistant sergeant at arms in San Francisco with one Tom named Barry Goldwater. And I said, you can't get any lower than being an honorary assistant, but it got me into the convention. But I came back and I sent $19 and some odd cents to the Barry Goldwater campaign. But anyway, then but I became the total conservative columnist at UT Daily News. Well, I worked in the Nixon campaign in the summers of '67 and '68. And then they wanted me to go on the road as an assistant field man, but I wanted to go back to get back to school. So I came back to UT, And somebody anonymously sent me the minutes from the issues committee, which was the people that paid the outside speakers. And they had a list of speakers they were trying to bring in that year. They sent invitations to Jane Fonda's husband, Tom Hayden, to Angela Davis, who was the most famous communist. Hubert Hunter was about the most conservative person they nominated, or invited. And so I got, and they said possible conservative speakers, and they had the Ku Klux Klan member, John Birch Society member, Kaz Walker. Well, that made me really mad. Because I think that a Ku Klux Klan member would be considered a conservative. So I wrote a column blasting that, listing about 15 famous conservatives. I turned it in to Tom Gillum, who was a left-wing reporter from Nashville, Tennessee. He refused to run that column because he said my column that I'd written the year before, my junior year, that it was on a national issue. He said, this is a campus issue. Well, I then took it down to Guy Smith at the Knoxville Journal. And he first told me, he said, I don't think I want to run that. He said something about the campus stuff, but he said, I'll take a look at it. So that was a Friday morning, and I brought it back up to the Journal and left it off. The next day, to my shock, he not only ran it, he ran it starting on the front page. And it was a football Saturday, and the circulation went up from 77,000 to 82,000. And but Tom Gillum, he got so mad, he told me that he was removing me as news editor of the Daily Beacon. He was taking me off the SGA beat, which was considered the best beat for the Beacon, and he was cutting my column down to once every 2 weeks instead of once a week. I said, no, you're not, because I quit.
They were trying to cancel.
Yeah, they were trying to cancel. And so I went to see Guy Smith, and he hired me to be the assistant state editor of the Knoxville Journal, which meant, among other things, I did the obituaries and the TV. The journal gave me titles instead of money. But I worked there at the Journal my whole senior year until I got ready to go to law school to George Washington. But anyway, I can't tell you though how much that I appreciate all of you all and what you meant to me and my family over the years. It was I would hear people say in Congress, I'm gonna do this job, so I'm gonna go out and make some money. Or they want to run for governor or senator or something. My first year in Congress, they had this roving camera for the Capitol Hill newspaper called Roll Call. And I would try to avoid those people. But one of them called me and snapped a picture, and they said, if there was a statue of you in the Capitol, where would it be and what would it say? I said, well, it'd probably be in the basement, and it'd say, lucky you. And I was always very grateful for my job. And so I just want to close with this. Surprisingly to me, the nicest article that I had a lot of very nice, kind articles. The nice article ever written about me came as the last article that was written in my service during my time in Congress. It was written by a man named Ryan Gurdusky, who, strangely enough, I happened to see on CNN last night. But he wrote an article, and it says it's called Jimmy Duncan, the hero America ignored. And I don't feel like I was a hero, number one, and I don't feel like I got ignored because the people that meant the most to me were my constituents, and I didn't try to get a lot of national publicity. But he summed up what I tried to do better than I could have summed it up myself, and I'll just read one little paragraph. Duncan belongs to a brand of conservatism that dates back to the Eisenhower era, one that regularly opposed both the military-industrial complex and big business. He looked out for the interests of Main Street instead of Wall Street, and voted to protect America's liberty and security at home instead of traveling the world in search of monsters to destroy. Other Republicans used to believe in the same things Duncan advocating for the working class instead of K Street lobbyists, are weapons developers who live in and around Washington. And like I said, I thought that summed up what I tried to do. And this is a man I never met and was never interviewed. So I paid attention, a little bit of attention, I guess, to what I tried to do. But thank you so much for letting me be your congressman for over 30 years. Yes, Mike.
Question. 2 or 3 times I've seen on the news that in Venezuela, they're letting them out of prison if they will come to the United States. Is this part of the 30,000 line?
Well, I might leave you, but there's really about any more in Venezuela. But I'll tell you, just last night, Vicki and I were watching, we had the political channel watching Forensic Facts. I'm sure some of you did. Those are true crime stories. And the one we just watched for about half an hour last night. It was about this Mexican immigrant who had murdered 2 women in New Mexico. Finally got out of prison in Mexico, thanks to Border Czar Harris came to Texas, killed 3 more women. And for some reason they didn't give him the death penalty. I can tell you, I think that would have deserved the death penalty. Kill women that they know of. And then they find it. That's it. I know there's a lot of good people coming in, but there's a lot of really bad people. We're letting them flood in here too fast, too many without vetting them and looking into it for the children. But thank you so much for listening to me, and thank you for letting me represent you in worship.